If you've tried everything to be consistent, but you're just struggling, you cannot seem to do it, I'm gonna give you the exact reason why you're struggling, and I'm gonna tell you exactly how to get out of that to grow really, really powerfully. This is a jar that changed my life forever. And I'm gonna tell you exactly what I did to make me the most consistent version of myself possible. Hi, I'm Nick McLaughlin. I'm an executive function coach giving you strategies to unlock unstoppable focus and follow through using fun and simple analogies. What I would do wrong before when I wasn't really able to be consistent, I'd have really high expectations. I would be a perfectionist and constantly keep resetting my expectations higher and higher and higher. And I wouldn't reach them and I just guilt trip myself even more and more and more. That was not helpful for any progress in my life because I would only ever really reach those perfect moments really rarely, and I wouldn't know how I got there. So then on the days that I really needed that help, that control, and that consistency, I didn't have it. And it would only make me compare myself to the days where I did well and say, well, the vast majority of my life isn't consistent, so I must suck at life. And I was really hard on myself, and it's hard not to be when you're trying to be a perfectionist and you're not made to be perfect. I was so used to comparing myself to a neurotypical person having ADHD myself, that I thought if I don't look like that, then I must be a failure. I must be broken. I must be unfixable. And I just couldn't wrap my head around what actually brings consistency. And I would watch videos and read books and listen to audiobooks, like all these, I would do so many different things to help me. And it still did not get through my thick skull. And it was so frustrating. So one day I made a decision to do something I'd never really done before. This is actually a perfect saying. How you do anything is how you do everything. Remember that saying. That changed my whole life. I used to look at life like, say, I'd see a dollar bill on the floor, I'd pick it up, right? Who wouldn't? But then when I saw a dime or a penny or a quarter, whatever, doesn't really matter, maybe a quarter. How big of a difference can that make? Well, this jar actually has a really fun story to it. One year, I decided I'm going to practice being a more consistent person and see physically if I can actually make myself more consistent by doing consistent things. So the one thing I decided was to pick up any penny, dime, nickel, anything, any change at all, and just be consistent with that and see the power of the compound interest. So what I would do wrong before I use the jar system, and I'm gonna tell you what that is I would just pick up dollar bills. That's it, nothing else. The growth would be really slow and inconsistent. I mean, this looks consistent, but that's just because it's zoomed in from this, but it would be so small. I'd only end up making probably, like maybe 10, 20 bucks a year from picking up stuff, maybe less, honestly, maybe $5. And I thought, I wonder if it would be any different if I picked up all the change I found instead. And I just practiced being consistent and counted all the small things I was consistent with in my day, for example, because this is an analogy as well. This penny represents a tiny task that I could not care about at all. Okay, I finished that task, who cares? I should have done that. I should have brushed my teeth, or I should have taken a shower. Everything in between that and a quarter is kind of similar. It's like, okay, yeah, these are little things here and there. Those big tasks you want to finish are like $100 bills, $10 bills, 20s, 50. Those are the things where you're like, if I'm not picking that up, then I'm not making much effort today. I'm not really accomplishing much today. So that makes these kind of tasks look infinitesimal, like it just does not matter at all, especially a penny, especially the kind of tasks that you should be doing, right? That you expect yourself to do. Well, hold on a sec. Just because you're picking up these kind of tasks and you're acknowledging what you're doing and you're trying to be consistent with small tasks as well, does not mean you can't pick up the big ones too. I'm just changing, I'm shifting my mindset from, oh, why even bother with these tiny little tasks, or breaking down a $10 bill task, like a big task that's important to me, into a bunch of quarters, right? Why? Like, what's the point of that? When you actually break things down and when you care enough to say, I'm going to let go of trying to be a perfectionist, it makes things more possible. So what happened with the jar, I picked up every coin I could find for a year. I ended up having a massive amount of change that ended up equating to more money than I made from just picking up dollar bills. And I thought, is this going to work also with tasks? Is this also going to work with other forms of my life where I'm trying to be consistent and not be a perfectionist, not just count the big tasks, the big important things, but what about the small things? What about the tiny tasks? What about breaking things down into smaller steps? Does that really make a difference? And what changed my life is this. This is representing this jar, right? The coin jar. That didn't look cool at all. And it also represents the tiny steps I took and when I broke things down, and there's so many little things I did. It started out so small. Like for the first few months, I didn't see much of a change when I picked up these coins, right? But over time, what I didn't count on was the compound effect. This is the compound effect. This is what it looks like. If you've heard of compound interest, this is pretty much how it works. You can't even imagine how much you've actually made over time because of the interest. This is barely growing at all, but at a point, it just blasts off. And this is usually like representing how I felt with the 3 previous YouTube pages I've tried to make, where I would quit around here because the growth was so tiny. If you zoom in, it literally looks like this. And that's like after like 3 months, and I'm like, what's the point? This one's different, because I'm actually taking this one really seriously. But once you get past a certain point, what happens is it starts growing ridiculously fast. It took me a year to get 1,000 subscribers on my last YouTube channel, but supposedly it's going to compound. So it doesn't take another year to get another 1,000. What happens is the compound effect comes into play. And basically you get 3,000 to 5,000 and then 10 to 20, and then it just keeps growing from there. So I started seeing the value of the small coins, the small tasks that I didn't think were that important. I started counting those, and it started making me feel more accomplished. It also made me feel like I could acknowledge what I was doing right. And it also made it so that I wasn't aiming for perfection. And when that happened, I was actually able to way more easily jump into things, because it's much easier to pay for something if it only costs you a quarter, right? Instead of something that costs you $100. If it's $100, you're gonna pause, you're gonna hesitate, and you're gonna think about it, and you're gonna think, oh, this might be too expensive for me, I'm not sure. We're the same way with our mental energy, with our time a lot of times, how much things feel like they're gonna drain us. But when something is as tiny as this quarter, it doesn't seem like as much of an investment. And because of that, it's a lot more easy to just put it in the jar. And after that year, something funny happened. I ended up having over $100 in change that I never would have picked up if I didn't aim to be consistent and start with counting smaller things I would do. It's not the kind of money you can roll around in. It really hurts. Not that I would know. Whereas with the dollar bills, I didn't even make $10 a year. So I made over 10x just from picking up the small things, just from counting the small things I did. So how I applied this into my life as someone who is trying to let go of perfectionism and just be consistent was I would start breaking things down into small steps. If I didn't want to work out at all, I said, instead of just going to the gym all out and getting dressed and driving when I don't even feel like getting out of bed, I'm just gonna do the smallest thing, just anything. I'm just gonna stretch, or maybe I'll just do some push-ups. And I would count that. And what happened was I actually got in better shape when I was more consistent with tiny little steps instead of going to the gym once or twice per week after dreading it. Because my body was used to working out often, I felt more in shape, I felt better. It creates a neural pathway in your brain that basically creates a habit where now you're working off of autopilot instead of trying to force it all the time. If you are trying to be perfectionist and do everything the right way or doing big tasks or important tasks all the time, that requires an immense amount of mental energy, and it's going to require willpower. But if you are constantly counting tiny little consistent steps, that requires very little willpower in the beginning. And because you're doing it often, repetitively, it's no longer requiring willpower. It's now autopilot. So never underestimate what consistency with tiny little steps can do. If you found this video helpful, like and subscribe. I'd love to hear in the comments what you thought. And if you need executive function help, go ahead and click the link in the description below.